context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast.
All right, Fact Check This daily. And I can tell my kids have been in here messing on my computer. There we go. Get that a little bit. All right. So I actually found a relatively older article. I say older. It's from back in the year, I think, mid to late January, from the Washington Post, that actually kind of goes along well with the topic from yesterday. So yesterday, we talked about scrubbing the internet and how that affects your ability to look into stuff, to look back at stuff, to see what is and isn't correct and accurate, and what existed, what didn't, to track how things have been changed and stuff that's been deleted and removed. This article, and it's one of many. There have been a lot of these that have come out over the last 4 years. But this one is more or less the most recent. And I actually got some, interestingly enough, some pushback on Reddit, as well as some other, Wall Street Journal actually pushed back against this. So it hasn't been super duper just well received, and probably because the more people are doing their own research, the more it's looking like you probably should, especially as a lot of revisions have come out on stuff that the conspiracy theorists got right. It's crazy, right? So this is from the Washington Post. Philip Bump: doing your own research is a good way to end up being wrong. The internet has been a huge boon for the accessibility of information. There are very few barriers to consuming classic literature or detailed science analyses or catalogs of news reports. There is also an exorbitant amount of garbage information, of course, and an entire universe of people who say stuff that they think will get people to click links that will earn themselves money. While confidence in American institutions has been in decline for some time, it's not hard to imagine how the economic incentives of the internet contribute. There is an outsized appetite for derogatory, counterintuitive, or anti-institutional assessments of the world around us. This is in part because alleged scandals are interesting, and in part because Americans like to view themselves as independent analysts of the world around us. The result is that there is both a supply and a demand for nonsense or appealingly framed errors. Americans who have little trust in the system can easily find something to reinforce their skepticism, and they often do. This month, Neiman Labs' Josh Benton reported on research released last year that showed how people doing their own research on the internet often led them to gain more confidence in untrue information. The paper, titled "Online Searches to Evaluate Misinformation Can Increase Its Perceived Veracity," was written by researchers from the University of Central Florida, New York University, and Stanford. Their conclusions were straightforward. Online searches to evaluate misinformation can increase its perceived veracity. So people are searching for information about misinformation to find out whether or not it's true. And then what they find out is that it is true, but that's a bad thing because that increases the perceived veracity of the misinformation that's actually information. You following all that? Does that make clear as mud, making good sense? Yeah, because that's basically what they're saying. Although conventional wisdom suggests that searching online when evaluating misinformation would reduce belief in it, there is little empirical evidence to evaluate this claim, the authors wrote. Instead, they continued, we present consistent evidence that online search to evaluate the truthfulness of false news articles actually increases the probability of believing them. Later, they summarized the process. When individuals search online about misinformation, they are more likely to be exposed to lower quality information than when individuals search about true news. And those who are exposed to low quality information are more likely to believe false or misleading news stories to be true relative to those who are not. Look for info, see bad info, accept the bad info. The mechanism is explored at length, but in short, false claims or other rumors often generate fewer hits on Google, meaning searchers are more likely to encounter unreliable information that aligns with their assumptions. The paper is dense, Benton's summary is useful. And we talked about Google yesterday. We talked about how Google is manipulating search results, how Google is destroying the cache of all of these past websites and changes and stuff like that. So, like, obviously, if you're searching for true information, your search results are being skewed and pointed in a certain direction, and that's the way it's always been to a large extent, but even more so over the last several years. There's probably another factor at play, one not measured in the research. People who believe false claims often do so because those claims comport with their broader ideology or philosophy. Like a parent confronted with allegations of misbehavior by their child, those individuals would presumably be more likely to embrace dubious information supporting their belief than information that corroborates the allegations. The study presented participants with news stories to evaluate without a predisposition. In the real world, that usually doesn't happen. And this gets to the way that I do my content and my show. Like, for those who've been watching and listening to me for several years, you know that a lot of the stuff that I cover is more left-leaning articles. I cover a lot of stuff from The Atlantic, The Washington Post, Mother Jones, Vanity Fair, Salon. Like, I cover a lot of stuff from mainstream media. But the way that I cover it all is I take and I look at what they say, and then I compare that to what other sites are saying and what research and data are showing, that you can get, like, interestingly enough, the research and the data and the actual statistics and information that are linked in the websites that are not all of the either left-leaning or mainstream trusted news. Crazy, right? And that's why they don't want you to do your own research. Because if you actually start doing your own research, you might see all of this stuff that is being said on the one side and start to ask questions about it, and then find, not only do you find that there's other articles out there that say something different, they also provide context and evidence. Anyway, carrying on. One of the ways modern media environment has made it easier for false information to spread is that false information often adopts the veneer of reliable information. Sites like Gateway Pundit look like news sites in broad strokes. The Gateway Pundit, despite its history of propagating nonsense, is often treated as legitimate by people of prominence, and so its claims are treated as credible. The same thing happens on cable television. Channels like One American News, which I described shortly after the 2020 elections as a pro-Trump video channel offered with a cable news-like aesthetic, elevated numerous baseless claims before being booted from the major cable news systems. Its programming often appeared to be the equivalent of taking Alex Jones's InfoWars, but setting it in a local television news studio. Doing your own research might lead you to reputable-looking sources that are anything but, except that OAN was actually covering real news. If you looked at OAN throughout the entire course of 2020, they were probably one of the only news channels that was actually getting most things consistently right, especially in the wake of everything that's come out over the last 2 years with, like I said at the beginning, the conspiracy theorists ended up being true on a lot, or being right on a lot of stuff. OAN was actually covering things accurately early on. Gateway Pundit is the same thing. The Washington Post believes that this stuff is untrue, and so they say that it's untrue, but they can't actually back that any of it's untrue, and then they just say that it's it's like some Alex Jones in a regular news studio, when in reality they were actually hitting closer to the truth than anything the Washington Post has put out in the last 10 years. Aside from when WaPo occasionally gets a more right-leaning opinion writer that starts to hit on some stuff. But that's why you're not supposed to do your own research, right? Because you might actually start hitting on some stuff. And not just believing conspiracy theories, but being able to verify that those conspiracy theories are legitimately true. Journalist Michael Hobbs recently remarked upon another emergent pattern, that one can just adopt the aesthetic of a fact check or a secret document leak, and people will act like you've blown the cover off a huge scandal without assessing the underlying claim for themselves. This has been central to the effort by House Republicans to allege that President Biden was engaged in impeachable activity. House Oversight Chairman James Comer has repeatedly offered allegations against Biden that mirror the presentation of lengthy, detailed investigations, but then collapse under scrutiny. His supporters, mostly a subset of Donald Trump supporters, say Biden acted inappropriately and are happy to accept allegations as legitimate, while conservative media largely shields them from debunking for whatever good it would do. You don't have to shield people from debunking if there's nothing to be debunked. Why did so many Iowa caucus goers indicate they thought Biden's win was illegitimate? Partly because of Trump's advocacy for that idea, certainly, and in part because of the impermeability of the right-wing media universe. What is this right-wing media universe? Fox News is not even right-wing. I have never understood where this idea of some right-wing media conglomerate comes from. All media is left-wing. Fox News is closer to the center, but they're still left of center. Like, there is no such thing as right-wing media. And these people are fucking insane to keep acting like there is. If nothing else, this last election cycle really, really highlighted that there is no such thing as fucking right-wing media, period. But too many, cited doing their own research, looked for information on the subject that ended up reinforcing their beliefs. The most extreme recent example of Americans' recent willingness to embrace nonsensical claims is the QAnon movement. More muted since the January 6, 2021 riot at the U.S. Capitol, QAnon adherents say a secret cabal controls the world, with media, entertainment, and political elites conspiring, perhaps some believe, to traffic children and consume a secret chemical that children produce. Many with whom I spoke in 2018 and 2019, though, simply viewed QAnon as an organizing concept for how Trump was battling nefarious, powerful forces on their behalf. I remember clearly standing outside a Trump rally in New Hampshire in 2019 and speaking to a guy in a QAnon t-shirt. He was very genial and matter-of-fact in his claims and suggested that he knew why I didn't agree with his assumptions. What I needed, he said, was to do some of my own research. And it's crazy that the people who are touting don't do your own research are the same people that prior to 2020, where certain things were involved, suggested that you should be doing your own research. There was all the progressive soccer moms for the better part of 5 years who were refusing to get their kids any of those those suggested things. Totally not mandatory, just the recommended. They're definitely not gonna force those things on your kids at school if you don't do it, or take your kids away from you, put you in jail, force a doctor to give your kids 16 of them over the course of 12 hours, and then give the kid some irreversible disease, or even kill the kid. They're totally just recommended, not mandatory. But anyway, if you go back just several years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, these are the same people who were encouraging you to do your own research, to look into this stuff, to think critically about this stuff. And now that's out the window. All it took was what ended up being truth about 2020 and the aftermath of that. And now you're not allowed to do your own research anymore, because you might actually start to find out that the entire media apparatus is completely and totally full of horse shit. All they do is lie to you and manipulate you to try to get you to go along with whatever the fuck they're saying. Where if you actually did your own research, because there's plenty of it, I recommend doing it the way I do it. If you find something that you think seems questionable, go find the ones who agree with it the most. Start with them. See what they're saying, and see if anything that they're saying actually seems to make sense. See if anything that they're saying actually seems to align with the real world and what might be the truth on the matter. And then start to break it down from there. That, reverse engineer this shit. That's the way I like to do it. And if you don't want to do that, send me the topic that you don't that you're not sure about that you think seems suspicious, and I'll fucking do it. And I'll send you the link, and you can, join me while I do it, or you can just watch and listen to me break it down. But like, we should be doing our own research. The internet is full of information. Being ignorant in the information age is the ultimate crime. We should all know what the fuck is going on, and you should definitely be looking into it, because I guarantee you, the people who tell you not to look into it, in the mainstream media, the only reason they don't want you to look into it is because if you do, you're going to find out that they've been lying to you, and then you're going to start to realize not only have they been lying about every fucking thing for your entire fucking life. And that's it. That'll do it for today, because I've got shit I got to do, and I'm on kind of a tight schedule because of kids stuff today. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. I will be back tomorrow. I'm not as positive on what I want to talk about tomorrow. I don't know. Somebody send me something. Yeah, somebody send me something to talk about tomorrow. I got one, but I don't know if I really want to talk about it tomorrow. Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, have a good one. Later.